Okay, so I'm just going to run through just a short presentation on NVivo, first of all. And like we all already know, it's used for qualitative data management. You can see my slides, yes?
Yeah, yes, we can see slides.
Okay, all right, sure.
Thank you.
So NVivo is a software tool, and it was created by QSR International, a company that built it to assist qualitative researchers. When you collect data from the field, it helps you with coding the data. It helps you with making sense of that information. It helps you to identify and explore your theories. And NVivo can also create visual representations of your findings in the field. So one, you use it to gather data from your research. You can also gather data from literature sources, and as well as in the field where you go to do your research. And for your literature sources, data that you get from there, perhaps you're doing a literature review, you can use the NVivo to help you with that review, to be able to source the exact information that you need for your research. After you've gathered that research, then you can sort or organize your work according to the data sources. Perhaps you collected focus group discussions, in-depth interviews, key informant interviews, you did observations, whatever kind of data that you have in your research, it helps you to organize them so you can put them in different folders according to the type of data that you have collected. You can also organize based on demographics. You can say urban data collected from urban areas, data collected from rural areas, or depending on the districts in your environment or the way your country or your area is divided into districts or regions or whatever you have. Then again, your literature, again, I'm talking about your literature review. You can organize the PDFs that you're using for your literature review in the NVivo according to maybe different topics that you're looking at or different issues that you're trying to review. And then within the NVivo, you have coding structures. So NVivo allows you to label different aspects of your data or of the literature you're bringing in so that you can have them categorized to assist you in identifying the themes that will help you in your report writing. So while doing all of that, you can analyze your data by coding, as I've already mentioned. And the coding means that you're labeling different aspects of your data, the quotes from the individuals that you have had the discussions with or that you have interviewed. Okay, then you can run queries in the NVivo. Queries will include what we call text search, where you can look for a particular text in the in your data, or a particular should I say phrase within your data to see how much of that issue is being discussed amongst your participants, or how a particular issue relates with other issues being discussed by your participants. You can run word frequencies to see what issues that your participants are more prone to speak about. And we will see a bit of all of that during the practical session. And then you can make memos, and memos are notes that you can take within NVivo. For example, you can have a certain transcript, and within that transcript, there are some very interesting ideas or issues coming up in that transcript that you want to make a note on those issues. So you can create a memo and attach it to that portion of your transcript so that you can recall that what you thought about that issue at the time when you were reading through. Then finally, you can write your report, or if you're a PhD student, a postgraduate student, you can write your report or your thesis in the NVivo. You can start writing your discussions, your results and your discussions as you go through your analysis. So you can create a page within the NVivo where you start putting down your thoughts and the processes in NVivo. And then again, if you're looking to write a paper for a peer-reviewed journal, you can also write it within NVivo. If you remember, I've talked about bringing in your literature sources into NVivo. So if you do your literature review, you can begin the process of writing your paper within NVivo. So you can do all of this in NVivo. So when you first open NVivo, when you launch the software, it comes up to the launch pad. I prepared these slides before the newest version came out. So please don't pay too much attention to how differently it will look from what you have now. But the basic thing is that it opens to the NVivo Launchpad, where if you look on the screen at the top there, you will see the new project. So when it opens to the Launchpad, it allows you to create a new project. If you have already existing projects, they will also be listed on this Launchpad page. And then you'll be able to work on any particular project you want to work on. So which means with NVivo, you can be working on different projects at the same time, but each one that you open will be specific to that particular project. So for instance, we are working on Chorus. You can have a Chorus project. You could be working on some other maybe filariasis project somewhere else, and you can have that project on the same NVivo software, but you will just have it as two projects that you can access whenever you intend to work on that particular document or that particular work, right? And so when you click on the new project, it allows you to create a project by naming that project so that you can, you know where it is, you can share with other people, and then you describe it. And then you go ahead to, after you have described it, to go ahead to open that project within NVivo. When you open the project, you can import the files that you need to be working on in that project. So these files will include maybe focus group discussions that you carried out in the field, in-depth interviews, key informant interviews. It could be video recordings that you took in the field. It could be pictures that you took in the field. Any data that you have for your qualitative research, you can import it into NVivo. Okay, and when you're importing them, the one thing to remember about NVivo is that organization starts from scratch. From the beginning, you have to start organizing, or else you will run into trouble somewhere along the line. So if you're importing your documents, it's best to start arranging them as focus group discussions, in-depth interviews, videos, pictures, whatever you have coming in. It's good to put them in folders, and we will do that in the practical session. So this just shows you that because you have your transcripts in Word document and they are saved on your laptop. So with this box, it lets you go browse your computer and pull your documents from where you have saved them on your laptop into the NVivo software. When you have done that importation of the documents, then you will see them appear in your NVivo like so. So you have here FGDs, KIIs. So this individual didn't bother to separate the focus group discussions from the KIIs, but I prefer to work creating folders for the different categories of data collection that I have done, just so that the organization starts at the beginning. Of course, eventually you can classify them, and we will get to that as well. You can classify them as focus group discussions or KIIs within NVivo, such that when you're analyzing your data, it will recognize an FGD as an FGD and a KII as a KII or IDI. But the original, but organizing it from the beginning saves a lot of hassle down the line. So when you have imported the transcripts, and if you double click on any of them, you would see it open in another window fully as it has been transcribed in the Word document. If you see the little blue writing on top, it says click to edit. So you can actually do some editing, some corrections, maybe some typos that you've seen within the transcript. You can also correct them here. If you are working together with other individuals, perhaps you're going to merge your work at some point, it's best not to edit anything, because when you edit, then if I edit my work and then I want to merge with another colleague, it means that we now have two different documents, and NVivo will recognize it as two different documents. And so it will not make the comparison that we are hoping to make. Okay, so editing should be it's better done or best done before you import the work to NVivo. Right, so that's about importing the work into NVivo. So now when you import your transcripts into NVivo, the next step would be to create the nodes, the codes. Older versions of NVivo say nodes, but the latest version now says codes, which is better because what we say broadly is codes. So a lot of times when it was nodes and you're running the training program, then people say, so what's the difference between the node and the code? It's the same. So it's a good thing that now NVivo says codes and not nodes. So you create your codes that you intend to use to label your transcripts. You create them in this space, and during the practical session, we will get to that. And then if when you create the nodes, it allows you to put the label in so that NVivo will recognize that code as that label. And so that when you label different aspects of your transcripts, then it will be connected to that code. And when you open the code, all the different parts of the transcripts that you've labeled as that code will be able to be available to you. So on this page, we can see, if you can look on the screen, you can see where you have adaptive strategies and it's written parent. And then under adaptive strategies, we have forming watchdog committees, multiple job trading, and they're written child. So what this is trying to show is that you can have a code, okay, a single code sitting on its own, like this adaptive strategies, without all these other ones under it. But if for any reason you prefer to break down your code into smaller bits or into different other identifiable ideas that could come under adaptive strategies, then you create what is called child nodes. So the original code would be a parent code, and the ones coming after it will be child codes. So when you create it like this, it's called tree coding. But when you only have the parent code without child codes, then it's a free code. So free codes have no relationships and they represent big ideas. But when you have the free code now having a hierarchical sort of relationship with other codes coming below it, then it becomes a tree code. And the original code is a parent code, and the ones coming under it are child codes. Okay, right. Is there any question at this moment so that we can just move straight to the practical session, because it's easier to understand it as you do it, and then it can stick better. Okay. All right, so I think we should move to the practical session. I'm going to stop sharing this screen and open my NVivo. So if you have NVivo on your laptop, you can go ahead and click on it and launch it, and you will come to this page. So please do that. I'm going to, yeah. So if you click on your NVivo, you should come to this page, and yours will not have, here where I have recent projects, yours will not have that because I've been working on some other projects already. So yours won't have this. It should be empty, or if you're working on something else already, you should have it listed there. Can I move on?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. So then you get here, you see new project. And so I click on new project, and then it opens a window for me to give the project a title. So I'm going to name this chorus. And of course, the title depends on you, depends on what you're working on, depends on what you've agreed to name your project with your team. And, it's all subjective. And then you describe it. So for this purpose, I'm going to say chorus. I'm going to say chorus. What's happening? I'm going to say chorus qualitative workshop. Okay. And then I'll click this, keep a log of user actions. So I will tick that box. The purpose of ticking this box is that when I do any work in this project on my laptop, it's going to label it my name. So if I merge my work with another team member's work, within that merged version, you can see which portion that I worked on and what portion the other person worked on. So with keeping a log of my actions, then my work is labeled, and we can compare, within a team, what I'm doing and what someone else is doing, and if there's agreement between how we're using our codes and between what we think falls into different labels, and so on and so forth. So it helps with the agreement. And so when you have named it and described it, so you can say next. Okay. Then project saving, auto save the project. So I like to leave it on no, because prefer to save by myself. Again, if you click yes, then you will not be able to undo certain steps that you've taken that you want to retrace. So I click no, so that if I take a step and I feel, oh, I shouldn't have taken that step, I want to retrace it, I will be able to undo it. If you click yes, that option will not be there for you, but your project will be auto saving. So it's a matter of personal choice. So for me, I always click no. And then display save reminders. So even though it's not auto saving for you, it will remind you that you should be saving. So mine is set at every 15 minutes to remind me to save. So you can, set the time to your own preference. And after that, then at the bottom, I'm going to click on create project. So if you're just starting with the NVivo, it offers you the opportunity to take a tour. So I'm going to skip this tour so that we can go straight. And always it opens some description of what is happening in NVivo. And I'm going to just close this at the bottom. Right. So the project that we created, Chorus, if you look at the top left part of your screen, you can see that the project name is there. On the right under the NVivo, it says Chorus .mvp. So that's our project name. So which means this window that is opened is for this project called Chorus that we have just created. So the next step is to import the data that we have. So I will go to files, because those data, the transcripts, the FGDs, the IDS, they're all files. And I will click on files. So when I click on files, this window here, this white box, is now open to accept the files that I'm going to import, right? And on the top of it, you can see files written. I'm not sure if I can find a pointer on this thing. I'm not able to find a pointer. I would have used a pointer to show exactly where I'm talking about. Okay. So remember I said about organizing the work, that I like to make folders and put my focus group discussions in one folder and my ideas in another one. So I'll go to the files in the blue column. I'll put my cursor on files, right click on it, and you can see it's a new folder right at the top, just the way you will create your folder on your PC, on your laptop. So it says new folder. So I click on that. And this first folder I want to name FGDs. Okay. You can go ahead and describe it if you wish. The description box is not mandatory. So if you wish to describe it, it's fine. You can just write focus group discussions from my Chorus project, or you can leave it blank. And then after you've done that, you click on OK. And so if you look in the blue column, you can see that there is now a folder FGDs, and you can see it's indented, meaning that is under the files. Okay. Now, when we right click again on the files, if you right click on the FGDs, you will be creating a folder within the FGD. So what we want to do is create another folder within the files. So I'm putting my cursor on files and right clicking again, create a new folder, which I will name IDIs. And again, you can describe if you wish, and in any way that you wish. And then I will say, I will click on OK. And so now I have two folders, one being my FGDs and the other one being my IDIs. Right? Great. So far, so good. So far, so good.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Right. So now I'll click on my FGDs. And what this does is it opens a window for my FGDs. And you can see at the top of the window where it says FGD. So you're sure that this is your FGD window. So at the top of the screen, you can see import. There's file, there's home, and then import. You click on import, and right under it, you have files. So you click on files. Then you should go to your the files that you have, wherever you saved it, what you downloaded, where you saved it. You should go there and take from the FGD folder. So I'm going to pick my FGDs, which is all of these. And then I click on open. And then I click on import. And there you go. So all the FGDs are in here now. Okay. And I will do the same thing for the IDIs. I click on my IDIs to open an IDI window. And if you look at the top here, you will see it written IDIs. So you're sure it's an IDI window. Again, you click on files and go to your IDI folder and pick the transcripts. And then open and import as IDIs. All right. So when I click on my FGDs, you see my FGDs, and I click on my IDIs, I have my IDIs. So assuming this all the transcripts I have for my research, I've brought them all in here. Not to say I can't bring any more in, but this is what we have to work with. Okay. So this is about importing your transcripts into NVivo. So the next step would be to do the codes. Before we do the codes, I will stop sharing for a minute, and I will share I would open the code book. Yeah, code book. Okay, good. Right. So this is a code book. It's part of the documents that I shared with you earlier. So the transcripts that we have, I think I should give a little bit of background to what we are working with. So there are transcripts from a research that was conducted at the time when there was the Ebola viral disease outbreak in West Africa. And in Ghana, a research was carried out to, there was no Ebola outbreak in Ghana, but the research was carried out to determine the knowledge, attitude, and perceptions of individuals towards the Ebola viral disease and the preparedness of the healthcare system in case an outbreak happens in Ghana. So some of the questions that were asked bordered on if people knew about the transmission of the Ebola viral disease, what they knew about the incubation period, what they knew about the signs and symptoms, and so on and so forth. And if there were any misconceptions about how the disease is transmitted and all of that. So this code book was developed to guide the analysis process of the data that was collected. So we have a code here, transmission, and this is the definition, detailed definition, when to use it, if the respondent correctly identifies transmission of Ebola viral disease, and when not to use it, if the respondent doesn't correctly identify that transmission. And then an example from the existing transcript is put in here just for reference sake. So this code book is developed so that if you're working as a team, everybody should have this document and everybody should have worked on this code book together so that we are all on the same page on what defines our different codes, these different labels that we are putting together, what we will see in the transcript that will fall under that label, and what quotes we will see in the transcript that may look similar but don't fall under that code. So there should be an agreement in the team on what should go under whatever label. Okay, so this code book helps to direct that agreement within the team. So when we've all worked on this code book together, we've all agreed the initial thing to do is to code a few of the transcripts and then come together, look at what we coded. If we used the same labels, which means we are in agreement on what these labels mean to us as a team and how we should apply it to our transcripts. And when that agreement level has been reached, then the rest of the transcripts can be divided amongst the team members and the coding process can continue. So that's the essence of the code book. It helps as a guide. It helps to manage the process of coding the transcripts. So we have this code book that we developed to code the transcripts from that particular research. So these are all the codes that we applied to the different aspects of the transcript. So we're going to take a few of them. It's quite a lot, but this is just a practical session. So we'll take maybe the first few ones and see how codes, excuse me, and see how codes can be developed in the NVivo software. Okay, so the first one here is transmission. So I'm going to just copy it. Yes, another good tip that I should mention here. When as a team, you have developed your code book, and in the code book that you have shared with the whole team, you have the code here, transmission, written in capital letters. Everybody, when doing their coding in NVivo, will have to write it as capital letters. If I write mine as capital letters, and Mr. B writes his in small letters, and Miss C writes hers with the big T, capitalizing the first word, the first letter, NVivo will read it as 3 different codes. So it's very important that we agree that this is how it's going to present in our NVivo. So usually I like people to do the code book and then copy directly from the code book into NVivo. That way, there's no mistake of writing it in the wrong way, or capitalizing when you shouldn't, or using lowercase when you should have used an uppercase. Okay, so I copy this NVivo transmission, then I go back to my NVivo. So here it says codes, right? So I click on the codes just to open a window for my codes. I open a window for my codes, and then I right click in that space. I right clicked in the space, and on the top there you can see new code. So I click on it. And in the space that says name, I'm going to paste the transmission, right? Then I'll go back to my code book, and then I will copy the definition. I feel that the definition is important in this case, so that anybody who you share your work with can go to your definition and know exactly what you mean when you're talking about transmission. So you can either pick the brief definition or you can pick the detailed definition. So I'm taking the detailed definition. So I will just copy it, and then I will go to the NVivo and paste my description in the box, right? So when you copy and paste this way, everybody has the same lettering, the same case with their letterings and the same description in their description box. So it's a matter of agreeing with your team how you're going to do this. Then here is in this little box at the end, it says aggregate coding from children. I'm going to leave it unchecked so that when we code a few more portions of the transcript, then we'll come back to this and you can actually see how it works. So for now, I will leave it unchecked and say, okay. So now we have one code called transmission. And then I'm going to do a second code. So I go back to my code book and I'm going to take a code called incubation. So I copy it. I go back to my NVivo. Again, right click in the space, click on new code, and I'm pasting my incubation there. Then I take my description, my definition, copy it. And then I paste it there. Okay. Then I say, okay. So when you're building your codes from the code book, it may seem like a slow, tedious process, but believe me, if you finish with this step, every other thing goes faster and much more smoother. So taking your time to get it done right at the beginning will really, really, help your work progress in a smoother way. There are some questions in the chat box. Chukwu Edozie says, can PDF documents be imported and analyzed? Yes, you can import your PDF documents into NVivo, and you can also analyze it there. Then there's another question. Is there any option to preset the codes in NVivo and select later from there as appropriate?
Hey, Adam,
So,
it
yes.
seems like you are sharing the code book in the screen there. Probably you wanted to show the NVivo file.
Pardon? Please ask again.
Is this in the screen there? It's showing the code book. So I assume you would want to show the NVivo file on how you copied the code and everything.
Oh, it's not showing?
No, it's the code book.
Oh, okay. Then let me stop share. So now you see the NVivo?
Yes. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so when I did the steps, you didn't see it done.
Yes. If you could repeat once.
Then yes, then I will repeat. Yes, so then I will repeat. So so first of all, you have to click on this place where it says codes. So it opens this window right here. That says codes at the top there, right? So it opens this window. Then you right click in the window, in the open window, and it says new code. So you click on new code, right? So if you go to your NVivo, no, sorry, if you go to your code book, it lets you copy. It lets you copy what you have under code. You copy it. And then you paste it. And then again, you copy your description. You copy your description and you paste it, right? Abit, is it showing as NVivo? Just making sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
so you copy the code from your code book, you copy the description from your code book. And like I said earlier, it's good to copy from the code book so that everybody in the team has the same lettering in NVivo, so that NVivo doesn't read it as two different things. So after doing that, down here you have what is written as aggregate coding from children. And I mentioned earlier that I will leave it unchecked. We will do a few steps and then I will come back to it so that you can actually visualize how it works. Okay. And then you click on OK. And so you can see the one I just put now is science. Initially, I had done incubation, then I had done transmission, and then I did science. So when you create your codes within NVivo, it arranges it alphabetically. So that's why my science has come right there in the middle. So before, during the presentation, I talked about the types of codes. So all these ones we see here, they're all parent codes. Okay, they're independent codes. They don't have any hierarchical codes following them. So you can do that if you want to break down your work to, finer levels. So I'll use the transmission to give an example. So with Ebola viral disease, there are two types of transmission that are known. So first of all, there is an animal to animal transmission, and then there is there's an animal to human transmission, and then there is a human to human transmission. So you might want to collect the data based on what the individuals told you. If they answered, when you asked about transmission of the virus, if they answered to you that they know about the animal to human transmission, you might want to code that separately from those who answered that they know about the human to human transmission. So to do that, remember when we created these nodes, we right-clicked in the space, but this is for creating a new code altogether. If you want to create child codes within an already existing parent code, you put your cursor on that, on the relevant code that you're interested in and right-click on it, right? And so on top of it, it says new code. You click on that. And for this one, I'm going to say animal to human. Okay, so the description would be animal to human transmission. Right? And then I would say, okay. So if you notice, there's now an indentation and I have animal to human transmission under my main code of transmission. And then for the human to human, I would also right click on the parent code and not on the child. If I right click on the child code here, I will be creating a child for the child, a grandchild, so to say. Okay, so I will not do that. So to create the second child code for transmission, I'll right click on transmission and then new code. And here I will say human to human, right? And in describing it, I would say human to human transmission. Okay, my finger has touched something. Okay, and then I will say, okay, right? So here we can see our codes growing. We have the incubation, we have the signs, we have the transmission, animal to human transmission, and human to human transmission. Okay. I want to add one more before we move on. I want to add about knowledge about Ebola, how they got to hear about it. I thought I had it in the code book. Okay, we can add it on our own. So if you come upon if you need a label that you didn't already put in your code book, you can always inform your team that there's a label that I see information coming from our transcripts that we didn't consider in the code book, and I feel that it's the information coming from the transcripts with regards to that particular issue is very important. And so you can update your code book to include that particular code. And again, you can add it in the NVivo to capture all the data that you have relevant to that code. So I'm going to add a new code, and I'm going to say information. Okay, I'll use the capital letters like we are doing, information sources. Okay, and for description, I'm going to say sources of information about Ebola viral disease. So here, where individuals are asked about how they got to hear about the virus, so they can give their opinions there. So you can also see it's been arranged alphabetically. Okay. Right. So after you go ahead and put in all the codes into your NVivo, so you have the whole list that you had in your code book. You have all that list in here. You can do it, first of all, do all of it before you start coding, or you can do it, you can start coding and do it as you go along. So it's an individual preference. I like to put in the codes first, and then it makes the process easier. Then I just start coding and dragging the different portions of the transcripts into the relevant labels. So we would move to that right away. So now that you have finished with your codes, I think I should also mention that this little arrow here, or this little box beside transmission, if you open your NVivo and you don't see your human to human transmission or your animal to human transmission, all you need to do is tap on the plus sign at the edge and it will appear. Okay. So now we'll go straight to coding itself directly. So you go to your files. Remember, we brought in our FGDs and our IDIs. So you click on the FGDs. So all your FGDs open. And then you pick one. So I'm just going to start with the one at the top. So I'll double click on it. And it opens up at the side. Okay. So I've opened my FGDs. My FGD, the first one I'm going to work on. And this is an FGD held amongst men living in a rural area, and that's the name of the area. They live in a place called Nkwantakese, and it's in the western region of Ghana. So rural men in the western region of Ghana. So I also click in the blue column, then you click on the codes. Remember, we've already done some codes. So now we have our codes open alongside the particular transcript that we want to work with. So what you will do now is to start reading through your transcript, and you have to read through, or there is no shortcut to doing it. To do your coding and to do it well, you have to code each transcript individually by reading through from the beginning to the end and putting the different narratives that the respondents are saying into the correct label for what they're speaking about. So for instance, if we start with the first one, it says, so the person is is a focus group discussion. So the interviewer is asking, what is your source of information on Ebola? And the first person's talking about having heard about it on the radio. Okay, so they were being told about Ebola and what to do to avoid getting the condition. So what you do is you highlight it. you highlight all of that. Okay. So when you highlight it, two things you can do. There's a long version and there's a short version. So I'll show you the long version. First, you can right click and then it says code this selection. So you've selected a portion of the work and it says code it. So you click on code the selection. So it gives you this box where you're supposed to pick. Remember, these are the codes we already put into the NVivo. We've done these 4 codes. So it allows you to pick which particular code it goes into. So this is info sources, isn't it? So I click on info sources. Okay, so it's going to code the selection to info sources. So if you look here at the code, the column with the codes, you can see info sources 1, 1. So it means we have looked at one file and we have made one reference from that file for sources of information, right? Okay. Then again, you go to back to your transcript, and then the next person says, I also heard of it on the radio. If you take good care of yourself by not eating bushmeat, you will not get it. So again, you highlight that portion. So I showed you the long way of right clicking and then going to code selection and all of that. The other way you can do it is to highlight it. To highlight it and just drag it. You can see my arrow and you can see that some of that, the portion I've coded is attached to the arrow. So I highlight it. Okay. So I was talking and I dropped it in the wrong place. So do you see that I have it now in science? But that's not where I want it. So I'm going to uncode it from there. So I right click on it and it's supposed to have an uncode. Okay, this is a new version, doesn't have an uncode. The old version had an uncode, but what I'm going to have to do is to right click on this. Yeah, right. So this is the portion I had coded into the science, but that's not where I wanted it. So I highlight it again and I go to the top here and it has an uncode button, right? So I click on the uncode. And where do I want it to encode from? From science. So take it out from there. And I say, okay. So if you look on the code column, you can see that it's gone. The other thing you can do is to just use the undo button. If you make a mistake and you realize the mistake immediately, you can just undo. The undo button is at the top here. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see it? I've put my cursor on it.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So that's where the undo button is. So I could have done that. Yeah, but you can also, if you've done quite a number of steps and then you realize that, oh, I shouldn't have coded this there, I should have done it elsewhere, you can come directly to the particular text that you want to undo and right click on it, and then you can uncode it from where you intend to uncode. Okay, so now I'm going to code it in the right place by dragging it to info sources. You can see the info sources is oh dear. Okay, let me undo it again. Okay, so I'll drag it to info sources there. Okay, great. So you can see now we're still working on one file, but in this one file we have 2 references for info sources. So it keeps giving you that count so that you can keep track of how much information actually is coming from any particular transcript that you're working with. So again, the third person talks about haven't heard it from BBC. So still talking about sources of information. So now we have 3 sources. Now it can happen that while you're working on your transcripts, you could get up to do some other work. You could use the washroom. You could go have lunch or something, and you come back, and you don't want to have to read through all your work to remember where you stopped. You can use the highlight button. Okay, at the top here, can you see the highlight option there? And you click on it and it says highlight all coding. So everything you have already coded will be highlighted so that you know where you stopped. So that when you come back to your work, you don't have to read through and search through. You can just go directly to the portions that haven't been done. So it just helps you to tick, tick, tick. I've done all of these parts and I'm going on to other things. Okay. So how can one get the disease? So now we're going to transmission. And this person says he's heard that it can be obtained from the bats and other animals. So this is an animal to animal transmission. So I'm going to highlight it. And I'm going to drag it to animal to human, right? And so all these people are talking about animal to human. Right. So then this other person, respondent 9, then he says he's heard that if someone has the condition and you shake hands with that person, you can get it. So now we have stopped shaking hands and we use sanitizers to clean our hands after shaking someone's hands. And so he's talking about human to human, right? So there it goes. Okay. So I mentioned something earlier about aggregates. So here you can see in the codes, we have transmission here and it says 00. So nothing has. So even though under this parent code of transmission, we have animal to human and human to human that we've been coding, the transmission says 00. So if for any reason this is closed, it will seem like nothing has been coded under transmission, right? So you may want to be in a position to be able to view all your parent nodes without having to open all the child nodes to see it. So that's where the aggregate child codes comes in. So I'm just going to go back to that. So I'm right clicking on the parent node transmission. And at the bottom, towards the bottom, it says code properties, right? So I'm clicking on that. So this has taken us back to when we created this code. If you remember, we had the name, we had the description, and I mentioned about this aggregate coding from children, and I said to leave it unchecked, that we will come back to it. So this is us coming back to it now. So if I check that box and I say, okay, so now you can see here that there's a cumulative representation of what is going on within that parent node. So if for any reason this box is closed, you can actually see that something is going on in that code, that there has been information filed within that code. So that's what the child nodes, the aggregating of child nodes helps you to do. Because for when you have built all your codes in here, remember this list can grow very, very long. And if you have a lot of child nodes and you open them all, it can really look, quite too much. But if you can close all the parent nodes and you can visualize the files and the references in one go, then it will help you to see how much work is going on. The other thing you can do is that instead of going through this, what we did, you can just go right at the bottom and it says aggregate coding from children. You could have just clicked on that. And I wanted you to see the box at the beginning, what it really speaks to. But if you didn't do it at that beginning, you can just click it here and without having to go to the box. The other function of having these code properties here is that if you made an error, you can actually come back, maybe in naming it. Like I already said earlier, all the names should be the same. But if for any reason you made, there was an error or you made a mistake, you can come back here and correct it. And you can also come back and correct your description if you made a mistake, and then you click on OK, and it will be corrected, right? Okay, so we're moving on. I would like us to, so because we cannot code all the transcripts, so I'm going to direct us to targeted portions so that we can get a feel of, what I'm trying to let you grasp today. So here this person says that he's talking about, he believes that it's mosquitoes that spread the condition. So this is a misconception that mosquitoes and flies can help to spread the condition. So in coding this portion of the work, I would not like to code it in transmission, because remember, our code book had said that for transmission, we are talking about individuals who have correctly talked about how Ebola viral disease is transmitted. So now when we get to individuals who are saying something about transmission, but it's not correct, I would like to create a different code to organize all of those individuals there, so that when I'm beginning to write my report or to write my results out, I can say, even though a lot of people are aware of how Ebola viral disease is spread, there are people in the communities who hold on to certain misconceptions, and that will help later in directing how education of the people can go. What is it that they're thinking, and how can that misconception be corrected? So those misconceptions are just as important as the fact that there are people who know about the transmission of the virus. Okay, so I'm going to create a code here that says misconception. Okay, and I can say misconceptions about transmission. Right, and I'll say okay. So there it is, again arranged alphabetically. So I'm going to highlight that portion and drag it to misconceptions. So it's right there. Yeah. Okay, so just so we see, you can click on any of the ones you've coded something in. For instance, I'm going to click on info sources, just so you see how it looks inside of it. So when you click on any of the codes, you look inside, you can see up here, files. You've taken these files, you've taken this particular focus group discussion that is in the FGDs folder, and from it you have 3 references, and the 3 references are out there for you to see. Okay, so what this means is that in this particular transcript, you're able to extract everything that has to do with information or sources of information about Ebola and put it in one place. So that's the organizing it does. All information about sources of information from this particular transcript can be found in one place. So to find that information, you don't have to read the whole transcript. You can just go straight to info sources and see exactly what people are saying about sources of the information. When you code another transcript, here where you have the name of the transcript in here, after this one, you will have the name of the second transcript written there as well. And then all the information about the info sources will be there. So by the time you go through all your transcripts, all the information from your whole data set about info sources can be found in one place. All information about misconceptions from your whole data set can be found in one place. So when you're doing your write-up, you can go to one place and say, this is all I've got about misconceptions, and you can build your narrative from there. You can build your argument from there. You can make your conclusions from there, and so on and so forth. Okay, so I want to close this particular. There's an X at the top of beside the names. You can close it. So I want to close this particular transcript, and we can open one of the IDIs and also do a few of the coding like this, so that we have some data to work with for our next step. Okay, so I click on the IDIs in the blue column, and then I just pick anyone. You can pick anyone you want. So I just take the one at the top. And so again, I open my codes. I take my codes. It's in the blue column at the side. I click on codes just so that I have my codes open beside my IDI. So again, he's asked how one can get Ebola viral disease, and he's talking about the animal to human transmission. So I highlight it, and I have to open. Yeah, I have to open this transmission so I can get to the right child code. So I highlight this, and I drag it into animal to human. So now you can see that for animal to human, you can see that the files number has changed to 2, which means that information in this animal to human comes from 2 files, and 3 references have been made in total. So we have 2 references from the first file we were looking at, and then we have this 1 reference from this file. So to continue to calculate for you how you're using your files and how many references you're getting from your work. So then this person is also asked about human to human transmission, and he's answered that. So I'm going to just take it to human. Again, I'm going to the top to highlight my coding so that I can keep track of what I'm doing. So what I've coded has been highlighted so far. So this one says again, can it be transmitted via air? And he says it can be infected through the air surrounding an infected Ebola person. But Ebola viral disease is a contact disease. So I'm going to put that in I'm going to put that in misconceptions, right? Then again, he's asked about transmission by mosquitoes. And he says it's possible because the mosquitoes bite the Ebola patient and then they bite you. And so again, misconceptions because it's not transmitted by mosquito bites. Okay, so now we have 2 files under misconceptions, 3 references, and so on and so forth. So you continue with this process line by line until you get to the end of the transcripts, one after the other, until all the transcripts are done. Okay. Right. So when you have finished with all of your transcripts, there are a few other steps that you should do. Usually, you could do this before the classification. You can classify your transcripts at the beginning. But I like to start with importing the NVivo, importing the transcripts and doing the coding first, because it looks much more simpler, especially when you're running a workshop. When you start with classification, then it looks as if everything is so complicated. But once people grasp the idea of importing and coding, then when you bring in the classification, then it doesn't look so, should I say, scary. But this can be done at the beginning of the work as well. So I'd like us to talk a little bit about the classifications. So right here, you have file classifications. If you can see in the blue column, right? So we have file classifications in the blue column. So I'm going to click on that. So this window is opened for file classifications. Okay. So I'm going to right click. And you can see when I right click on the top there, it says new classification. So I click on that. And it gives me a window that says create a new classification, right? Or you can add at the bottom, the top one says create a new classification. The second one says add one or more predefined classifications to the project. Usually, NVivo gives you predefined classifications. So there's no need to create a new classification, especially if what you have is FGDs and IDIs or KIIs. So if you scroll down let me tap on this one first. So I'm doing the add one or more predefined classifications to the project. If you scroll down, you would come to where it says focus group, right? Focus group. So you click on that because I have focus group discussions and I say, okay. So it has created focus group for me. The purpose of this classification is that eventually you may want to run some analysis with your data that you've collected. And it's when you have classified your transcripts that NVivo will be able to run the analysis for you when you say, I'm running focus groups against IDIs or certain focus groups against certain IDIs. It is by classifying them that you'll be able to pick which ones that you're running against the other. So again, I'm going to create another classification that will be the interviews. So again, I click here on add one or more predefined classifications, and then I go down the list and look for interviews. Yeah, so I have, it's run ahead of me. Right, yeah, oh, goodness. Okay. All right, there, interview. And I say, okay, good. So these are the two classes of data that I have. I have focus group discussions, and I have interviews. So I've now classified them, but I need to give them attributes. So in classifying them, it's not enough to just classify. You have to explain the different, you have to explain the different attributes of each of your focus group discussions. Is it from an urban area? Is it from females? Is it from males? You decide what you want to, the attributes that you want to give. I could choose to do residence, gender, area, locality. You could decide to do something else, maybe occupation, religion. So it's up to you, the attributes that you need. But the attributes that you need will be things that are relevant to the study that you're doing. So again, NVivo has some predetermined attributes that you may decide to keep or delete or change. So with regards to the data that we have, I'm going to use three attributes, one being gender, one being the location, and then the other being the region. Okay, so I'm going to, so I just need three. So I'm going to take this one, the moderator. I'm going to change it to gender because I don't want to have the moderator as one of my attributes. So I'm going to change it to gender. Okay. And then, so that's the name. I've named it gender. Then I go up here where it says general and values. Then I go to values. I click on values. So when I click on values, at the bottom there it says add, right? And then I'll say male. And then I'll add again and I say female, right? And if there are other attributes you want to add here, because some people might want to say other, you can also do that here. You just click add and you can put that one. Okay. So oh, sorry, I need to delete this one. Right. So I have the male and the female, and I say, okay. And then for the transcriber, I don't need that. So I'm going to right click on it and delete it. Date and time, I don't need that. So I'm going to right click on it and delete it. location. So I'm going to use this one. So right click, and then I say attribute properties, right? So I'm going to leave it as location. And for location, I'm going to have urban and rural. So I go again to values, click on values, and then again add urban. Then again I add rural. Okay. And then I say okay. So I've done gender, I've done location, and the last one I want to do is region. So I right click on the number of participants, attribute properties. So I'm going to change the name to region. And then I'm going to add my values. So with the data that we have about 5 regions represented. We have what we have the okay. So this isn't working because I think it was the date and time. It's expecting a certain kind of values, the numbers. So I'm going to just create my own. It's expecting numbers, not text as I was trying to put in. So I'm going to remove it. I'm going to delete this one and create my own new attribute. Okay. So you can create a new attribute. You can change the names of the ones already there, or you can create your own new attribute. So here I'm going to have the region. Then it's going to let me add. So I have Volta. I have Greater Accra. I have Northern. I have Eastern. And I have Western. Okay. I'm going to stop here a little bit so that you can get the regions right, because I know these are terms that are relevant to my own context. So I'll just give you a few seconds to get this down. So we have Volta region, Greater Accra region, Northern region, Eastern region, Western region. But the country has 16 regions, but these are the ones that we have transcripts from these 5 regions. Okay. Right. So when you have all these regions down, then you say, okay. So now we have gender, location, and region for our focus groups. And we do the same thing for our interviews. So I open the interviews. It says interviewee, interviewer, transcriber, date and time, location. We don't need, these are not the terms I want. What we want is the gender, location, and region. So the same way, you can either create a new attribute or you can switch the attribute properties. The gender values, gender male and female. And remember to put them in the same order that you did the other one. So this is okay. I'm going to do, I want to check the order we did this one. Volta, Greater Northern. Volta, Greater Northern, Eastern, Western. Okay. So interviewers, I'm changing this one to region. So again, I'm saying Greater, no, Volta. Volta, Greater Accra. Northern region. Eastern region. And Western region. And I say, okay. Right? So I'm going to delete the ones that I don't need. in this one. And so location we're going to need. So we agreed on urban and rural. So urban, and then I add the next one, rural. Okay. So great. So now we have our attributes for the focus group and our attributes for the interviews. So this part of the work is done. So the next step for doing this is to link our files that we have, the transcripts that we have, to the different classifications and the attributes relevant to them. So to do that, we go to the files, we open our FGDs, right? So we have our FGDs here. So right click on your FGD. At the bottom, it says classification, right? It says classification. So currently you can see there's no classification for this FGD. So I'm going to say it's a focus group. I'm letting everybody know. So you can see at the end of the line, the FGD at the end of it, you can see where it's written focus group. So it has been classified as a focus group discussion. So all of them, I'm going to do the same thing. Classification, focus group. So I'll do the same for all. Right. So these are all classified now as focus groups. You can see at the end of the screen, they're all classified. And then I open the folder for the IDIs and do the same thing, classify them both as interviews. So classified as interview and the other one as well. So now they're classified. Then I go back to my FGDs and I right click on the first one. And you can see where it says open classification sheet, right? So it says open classification sheet. And so I click on it and there. So the 5 FGDs that are classified as focus groups, you can see them listed here. And so we need to assign for each of them, which ones are focus groups for males or females, which ones are rural or urban, and then which region it was conducted in. So there's a drop-down arrow for each of these. So the first one, gender will be male, right? Location is rural. And region is Western region. So I have that Western. So same thing with the second one. This one is female. It's urban women. And it's in Greater Accra. The third one, males. They're in an urban area. And they're in the Volta region. The fourth one. So this fourth one, they're nurses. And this group was mixed. They're nurses and they were males and females. So I'm going to leave it unassigned. I could have had an attribute that says other. So when you're working with your data, all of these issues will come. So you have to actually agree on what attributes you will assign to the different transcripts that you have. So I'm going to leave it as unassigned because I didn't put any mixed or other for it. But it's an urban area and it's in the northern region. So northern. And then this final one, eastern region, females, rural females in eastern region, right? So now we've done the classification and we have assigned attributes to all of our focus group discussions. Then we go ahead and do the same thing for the IDIs. So we have the two IDIs open. I'm going to close the focus group window because that's done. So with the two IDIs, again, I right click on the first one and I say open classification sheet. And so it opens for the two. And so I assign again, the assemblyman is male. The region, okay, that region is not in this list. It's in the Ashanti region, but for the purpose of practice, I'm just going to put him in Greater Accra, okay? And then he's in an urban area. Then we have the chief, who is male. He's in the northern region, and he's in the rural area. Right. So that's all our IDIs classified and attributes assigned to them all. So before we go on to do any sort of analysis with the classifications, I want us to go back to our files. I'm going to close this interview window. So we've brought in our NVivo and we've brought in our transcripts from the Word documents. We've brought them all in here. We're looking at our data. We've been coding, looking at how the codes relate with each other, looking at the similarities, trying to identify the themes in our work. There are some of the, you can run some queries to also help you with this whole analysis process. Trying to remove this. Right, so you go up here at the top of your screen, you see explore, right? You see, oh dear. Okay. I'm trying to click on my explore, but the screen share ribbon is blocking it. So I'm trying to get to it without. Oh no. Okay, good. I got it now. So on the top, you see the explore there, and you click on it. It opens this all the options for you to explore your data further. So we'll start with the text search, right? So I'm clicking on text search. So now you have this text search query. So what does the text search query do? It helps you to look in your data. It could be the whole data, or it could be portions of your data. It could actually even be just one file. But it helps you to look through your data and search for a particular word, a particular phrase that you're interested in. We're looking at Ebola, right? So I might decide to say, as I'm reading the transcripts, there are quite a few people who, often I've heard the word bushmeat come along, or the word bat, and I want to know, really how much of this term is being used in all of my data, or in a particular place. Maybe it has come up a lot in one of the transcripts from the rural area, and I want to search within that transcript how much of that information is in there, or I want to search through my whole data, or only the FGDs, or only the IDIs. It depends on what I'm looking for. But I put that search term in here. And so let me just say BAT. So I put it in this box. So like I said, you can search in selected items, like a certain file or a certain FGD or a certain IDI, or you can search in a selected folder, which could be all your FGDs or all your IDIs. But I'm going to search in everything. So I look for the word BAT, and then I click on the top here where it says run query. Okay. So I say run query. Right. So it has looked in all of my data and it's telling me that I have that word in my FGD for men in rural area. I have it in my FGD for males in the voter region. I have it in my IDI from the assemblyman and in the FGD amongst the rural women in the eastern region. So these are all my transcripts that have that term, which means the rest don't have anybody talking about the bats. So this is the summary of it. If you look at the edge on the right of your screen, on the edge, you can see where it's written summary. You would have to turn your neck a little bit to read it because it's written, should I say, vertically, right? So you have the summary, then you have the reference. If you click on the reference, it lets you see exactly where in all of those documents it has listed in the summary. It lets you see exactly where in those documents you have that word so that you can see the context in which the word was used. And then the next one is the text. It lets you see the text in itself. You can actually from here click on the text directly to go to that particular place where it refers to the word. And then it also gives you the word tree. Okay, so what the word tree does is it lets you see the relationship between those, like how the word but sits in the sentences in the different transcripts. So if you hover over any of the words, it will let you see which of the transcripts it comes out of, and you can see how it relates to the word but and how either from the beginning words that how a sentence starts before the word but comes in, or how the word but comes in and the sentence follows. So the word tree helps you see that. So this is for doing a text search. You can also go ahead. So I'm going to close this text search query. Or before I close it, this is the place where you can also do your literature review. I think I should touch on that because there was a question in the chat about it. So if you have a PDF, let me close this. If you have a PDF that you import, I might actually have to import that to show you. Okay, let me import. Okay, so if I go to my file, import files, right? I'm going to get a PDF into this. So I just did the same thing we did about importing, and I brought a PDF in from my laptop. So this is a PDF document right here, and I can open it. And actually, this is the paper that came from this work, from this data that we're actually using. So, but I'm just going to say, let's say I'm writing the paper on Ebola, and I have this PDF, and I want to go directly to areas in this paper that speak about, let's say Ebola. Okay, let's say Ebola. So I go to my text search. I go to my text search here, and I type Ebola, right? It could be anything else. It could be bat, it could be hemorrhagic fever, whatever. And so now, because I want to search in my PDF, I go to selected items. Okay. So good thing the PDF already is even showing itself. So I click on the PDF because that's the only place I want to search. So I click on it and then I run my query. Right? So it's telling me that within this Ebola PDF, I have 115 references. So I can see those references pulled out from the document itself. I can see within the PDF itself. Let me open this up. Within the PDF itself, Yeah, within the PDF itself, you would have it highlighted. And scroll down. I'm trying to scroll down. Okay, good. So I don't know if you can see what I'm trying to show you. Can you see this Ebola word highlighted in the PDF itself?
Yes.
Yes. So so when you look through the whole document, you will have that word highlighted. So if you're doing like a literature search and you have like a lot of PDFs and stuff, you can actually bring them all into your NVivo, and it can help you search through all your documents so that you don't have to waste time scrolling through every leaf, seeing if that particular article or that particular paper is relevant to your work. You can actually do this kind of search, and then you can say, oh, this paper, it speaks so much to Ebola, it would be something that would be relevant in my work. I could use this. Or you could do a text search in a particular PDF and find that it actually says nothing about Ebola, which means you would have wasted your time scrolling through that paper. And so you can do away with that particular one. So this helps you to narrow down your literature review to papers that are actually relevant to what you are searching for. So you can use the text search in that manner for your literature search, right? So I'm going to go to the next thing we can explore would be the word frequency, right? So I click on word frequency. I'm going to go away from the Ebola thing now. Okay. So I click on the word frequency. So with word frequency, what we're trying to do is to see how different words in the NVivo play off each other. Okay. So for instance, it says here display words 1,000 most frequent. That's a lot of words. So I'm going to reduce this to say 20. So the 20 most frequent words. And I'm not going to select any particular items. I want to see in the whole data set that we have, what are the 20 most frequent words. And then minimum length of 3, I'm going to increase that a bit. I don't like leaving it at 3 because it will bring in words like his, her, and they, all those kind of words. So I just maybe put 4 or 5, you can choose something. And then run the query. And so these are some of the most frequently used words that the participants were talking about. Okay, so this is just the summary. You can then look at it in a visual manner. I'm clicking on the vertical tags at the extreme right of the screen. So when I click on the word cloud, so you can see the issues that were of interest during the discussions. Ebola was of interest, that is, the disease was of interest, hospital health, people. So the bigger the word, the bigger the size of the word, the more people had talked about it. Okay, so this word clouds kind of visually represents the issues that people spoke about the most. There was a study on the use of insecticide treated nets. And when we did the word cloud, the word heat and rashes were the biggest sized words on the word cloud. So because a lot of people had talked about how hot they feel when they sleep under the mosquito net. So this is what the word cloud helps you to visualize the discussions that are going on. You can also present it as a tree map where the size of the squares represents the same thing. What people are talking about the most have the biggest squares, and the other one, the smaller squares, people to say that they spoke less about those other issues. And then you have the cluster analysis here. And what this does is to help you visualize the patterns so that you can see the similarities between the words that came up in your word search. So if you have here, let me take for instance, okay, here you have Ebola at the bottom here, closely related to health, closely related to infection, closely related to community. So the nearer the words are together, the more people had used them in conjunction to each other. Okay, so you can see how the words play off each other as the people interacted with you, or as they had the discussions, or as they had the interviews. So this is just the visual representations of all those interactions. So having said this, when you do your queries, if you do run the query and the result is something that you feel is good for your work, then you can save it. At the end here, you have the save button. So you save it and it is saved in NVivo, or you can copy it and put it in a Word document and save anywhere else you want. Right. So I think the last thing I want us to touch on would be doing some of the matrix coding. So the matrix coding helps us to draw graphical representations of what we've been working on. Right now, because we don't have a lot of things coded, it will not show the most beautiful graphs, but sorry, let me close this one. If, for instance, you have gone through your work and you've coded all your transcripts, when you use the matrix coding query, it can draw some very beautiful graphs for you. But I'm going to try with what we have. So I click on the matrix coding button, and it opens this window for me. So the first, you see, there's one of the boxes is named rows, and the other box is named columns. Again, you have the files and externals, selected items, selected folders, which will allow you to pick if you are looking for to draw your graphs with regards to certain files in mind. But if you're looking through all your files, you can leave it and then just pick here. For the rows, you need to choose what you want on the rows. So it allows you to select items. So for my rows, I'm going to take focus group discussions and IDIs. Okay, that's what I'm going to take for my rows. And I say, okay. So you can see here. In fact, I'm going to, let me take the ones that we worked on. We didn't work on this one, so I'm going to remove this. We didn't work on this. We worked on this assemblyman and not the chief. I'm going to leave the chief just so that I can show you something. We didn't work on this, so I'll take it out. And we didn't work on that, so I'll take it out. Okay, good. So today we had done some work on the rural FGD men, and we had done some work with the with the assemblyman, I think, but not with the paramount chief. But I'm leaving the paramount chief just so that I show you what it looks like when you haven't done all your coding. And then for the columns, I'm going to just add the attributes. So I'm going to select some items, or you can select attributes, or you can select codes, but I want to take codes. We did some coding on transmission. So I'm going to take that, the transmission. And we did some coding on information sources. I'll take that as well. Okay. All right. So my intention is to see how the information I'm getting from the rural men plays off with information that I got from the assemblyman. If you had done maybe rural men and then some urban men, then you can make that comparison. How are the rural men talking about these issues as against how the urban men are talking about those same issues? So you can make those kind of comparisons, and it draws a graph for you to be able to visualize those comparisons. So I'm looking at these rural men, the assemblyman, and comparing how they got the information, how they spoke about transmissions, be it animal to human or human to human. Okay, so I run the query. And so first of all, I get the metrics, which is kind of like a summary. And in the summary, I can see that from my FGDs, with regards to information they told me about 3 sources of information. With regards to animal to human transmission, I had 2 references to that, and then 1 reference to human to human. With my assemblyman, he didn't say anything about his source of information, but he did speak about the transmission. And remember, we didn't do any transcripts, any coding for the paramount chief, so which is why he's got 0 all through. But let's look at what the chart, the graph looks like. Please, can you see this?
Yes.
Yeah. So if you look at the graph, let me turn it around. You can move it around with your cursor. So this first one here says information sources. And okay, good. So we have the FGD men from the rural area. And you can see that for them, they have the highest coding reference count for information sources. So we got a lot of our information from them. They had a lot to say about how they heard about the Ebola virus. And then we see their animal to human information, and then their human to human information. Same thing for the, now turn this around so that we can see better. So same thing for the IDI with the assemblyman. So we can see how much information we got from him. And then at the back here for the information sources, you can see we didn't get anything from him. Then the paramount chief that we didn't do yet, you can see it's all 0, nothing. So when you've done your transcripts, coded all the transcripts, and you have some information for each transcript in each code, then these different bars will be apparent, and you can look at different codes or different issues, play of rural against urban, men against women, Greater Accra region against Volta region, and you can make those comparisons and see how the people are talking about the issue that is being discussed in general. Okay, any questions, please? Any questions, please? Abriti?
Yes.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. This is the
good.
yeah. This is where we're ended. Yeah.
So, Ada, do you want to just quickly run through how you look at the outputs? Because I think that's something. I mean, like from different codes and how you export.
Ah, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you have the codes here, so if you just click, let me close this one. So if you click on any of the codes, so for this one, you can see that we had the FGD for men, and this is all of what came from them about transmission, whether animal to human or human to human, because remember I clicked on the parent code, so it's opening everything for me. If I wanted to only see animal to human, I would have clicked down here, or human to human, I would click here. But I've opened it all because if you remember, we aggregated all the child codes, so you can actually look at it as a whole, or you can look at it per each child. And then the second transcript was this one, and we have 2 references from this particular transcript, and you can look at it here. You can, so when you have these different codes, you can begin to draw up your information about, should I say knowledge about Ebola viruses could be one of the themes that would come up. And in writing about that knowledge about Ebola virus disease, there are different things you want to bring under it. You want to add, first of all, the sources of information that people have about Ebola virus disease. You'd want to add what they know about the transmission of Ebola virus disease, what they know about the treatment. And then under that knowledge, you also want to make some good argument with regards to the misconceptions that they have and what can be done about correcting those misconceptions. So when you put in all your codes, or when you put in all your narratives from your transcripts into the relevant labels, then you can see the bigger picture, and then you're able to organize your thoughts and put it down in your documents. The other thing you can, I said something about you can write you can start writing your work, your results, and your discussion in NVivo. So the way to do that is that you can open what we call a memo. One second, let me quickly show you. Yeah, so you click on create, and you have at the first one there, you have the memo. So you click on the memo, so you can name it, you can say reports, right? And you can describe that this is the reports of the work I'm doing with Chorus or whatever. And then you say, okay. Okay, so the report is open, and then you can start putting down the issues that come up. Yeah, so you can start putting the issues. For some reason, my key is not typing. Okay, good. And say results, and then you can say discussions. And so with your results, then you can start typing, what you find in your work. And then with your discussions, you can also do the same. So if it's a paper you're writing, you can build it here. As you do your analysis, you take the information that is you're deriving from your data and start to build your results and your discussions in here. You can also make notes. You can create another memo that is just for note taking, maybe some certain quotes that some people said that you find very interesting that you want to add into your work. You can also create another memo to keep those quotes aside from the main bulk of quotes that you have. If you want to export your work, you go to File at the top here. Now, let me close all of this. Good. If you go to File at the top here, and remember we said we had clicked at the beginning when we were creating the project, we had clicked that we don't want it to be auto-saved. So you remember to save your work before you log out. So you have to click the save button. But that apart, if you want to copy your project, for instance, you've done this work and you want to share with me, I'm in another country or in another office, even in the same office with you, but you want to share with me so that I can open it on my laptop, you have to copy the project. So you click here, copy project. Yeah, so you click on copy project. So it copies the project. So depending on if the person you're copying to is using a Windows machine or a Mac machine, you have to also pick the appropriate button. So if you want to share with somebody using a Mac, then you have to click this so that what will copy will be a Mac version that he or she can open on their PC. If the person uses a Windows, then you click on this button and they can share with you. I'm using a Windows, so I can click here if I'm sharing with a Windows person, or I click here if I'm sharing with a Mac colleague. Okay, so when you do this, then you choose where you're copying to. You can copy to your desktop, you can copy to your pen drive, wherever, and then you name it. So I'm naming this Chorus, and then I save it. Okay, so I can see here it will be located on my desktop as a Chorus NVivo file. Now, when you share with somebody, only somebody who has NVivo on their laptop can open a shared NVivo file. So I click on OK. And when I go to my desktop, which is where I put it, the copy of this particular work we've done now will be there. And I can email it to Abriti, I can email it to Mahwa, or to anybody else who would like to have a look. And then they can open it on their PC as long as they have an NVivo file. Right, Abriti?
Yes, yes, I am. So yeah, I think that's all. And one more,
Yeah.
do you also want to show how we can look at the outputs based on the attributes?
Look at
I'm
the,
not sure. Based on the classifications we made, like gender.
yeah. So if you, okay, yeah. Okay. So if you pick on, let me remove this. We talked about the matrix coding, right? So same place. So if you're choosing the rows, for instance, so we already worked on 2 files. So I only select the files that we worked on. So we have, we worked on this one. And then I'll just check this one. We also worked on this one, right? Okay. So now we have those 2 files. And then I check on attributes. The first time I did it, I clicked on select items. But if you want to do it based on gender, location, region, whatever attribute you're choosing, then you pick here, select attribute values, right? And so you can select, we had our focus group discussions, and then you can select gender, okay? And then you say, okay. And so, okay. So for the male rural men in Western region, this assemblyman, but remember, we didn't code enough data to be able to look at gender differences. But this is just for a show, just to show you how it would go. And so we do that, and then we see the chart. So this graph here only has to do with the attribute of gender for the 2 that we have coded. Okay, so that's how you go to the attributes, but we don't have enough data, enough coding to actually see a lot of, difference in what we're doing. But that's where you go for it. Right, everything?
Yeah, I think we have covered most of the things. I'm not sure if anyone else has any queries or anything they want to further understand. Anyone from the team? Any further queries or questions to Ada? Okay. Okay, so it seems like we don't have any further queries or questions from anyone. But there is a Padlet link said by Zorsia. So if you could please provide any feedback there in regards to today's training session, and also if you could note down the other training requirements in terms of, or you feel is needed in terms of NVivo itself, and also further qualitative analysis or any other areas in the qualitative research. So please feel free to write it there so that we can plan the next sessions and also discuss about it in the ALZ2, how to take it on, in regards to how to take it forward. So if there isn't anything, then thank you, Ada, so much for your detailed presentation and discussion. It was